Hi, Greg Foster here with ARC Radio, and I'm with Magda Havas. I've read a lot about her. I've watched a lot of videos, and I've been trying to educate people with miles since 2005 with EMFs, and now this thing about 5G. Magda, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do and how you got into the whole EMF scenario.
Okay, well, I'm an environmental toxicologist, and I started doing research on environmental pollutants and their effect on plants and animals, that sort of thing, mostly chemical toxins. And in the early 1990s, I was curious about electrosmog and how it affects people. And I began to do a lot of research into it so I could teach it initially in one of my courses. And I found that the research was very confusing. The scientists couldn't decide if it was harmful or not. And so I left it for a few years. And then one day, my husband was in Wales with his brother, who's an engineer, and they were walking near a nuclear power plant with high voltage tension, wires above. And it was late at night, and they were walking the dog, and my brother-in-law pulled out a fluorescent tube from under his coat, held it up, and it lit up. And when my husband came back and told me about it, I became even more fascinated, did the same thing, found the same thing, and then just did a deep dive into the literature and became totally fascinated by it. And I've been doing
No,
research on it ever since.
Now, when did that happen? Because it's funny you say that because that happened with Kim and myself. Somebody told us about EMFs, and they told us about the whole fluorescent tube thing in Australia, and we thought, you know what? There's a place nearby where we live, a bunch of hydro lines going along this lake bed area. It's a gravel pit, and we took those fluorescent tubes, and it was like Star Wars. They lit up at our hands. But the thing is this, the next morning we woke up with headaches.
Ah.
So like, yes, we're 70% water and we're an electrical system. And to me, I think it was just like a hangover from being there. So if you could talk a little bit more on that.
Well, there are people who have become electrically hypersensitive. The same thing did not happen to me, but I do now work with people with electrical sensitivity, and this is an intolerance to exposure of this electromagnetic field. As you say, we are electromagnetic beings. I was taught that we're a sack full of chemicals and water, and while that might be true to a certain degree, what really determines life is electromagnetic impulses in the body, your heart rate, your brainwave activity, every neurological system that's working. While I'm doing this, there are electrons flowing, and that's what's allowing this to happen. And the evidence of life is whether or not you've got a heartbeat or a brain function, and those are all electromagnetic. So I started working with people who developed electrical hypersensitivity about 20 years ago and continue to work with them. And what we're really trying to figure out is how do you diagnose someone with that? And how do you share that information with the medical profession? Because like me, they weren't brought up, being taught about the harmful effects of electrosmog. No lectures in medical school that I know of where this is taught. And so it's a new concept for them, and many of them are unwilling to embrace it because it wasn't part of their medical education.
Yeah, and if you people look behind me, the cell phone book, that was kind of a cell phone Bible for us, talking about the invisible hazards in a wireless age. And if you don't see it, you don't believe it. And I think that's part of the problem is people don't see it, so they think, it's not a big deal. But there's so many things that it says it'll do, like dizziness, headaches, from leukemia, and there's so many people that have come up with science. And if you could talk a little bit about that.
Okay, well, when it comes to electromagnetic exposure from different frequencies, everything from the fluorescent light bulb and the power line frequencies all the way up to microwave radiation, what scientists have found is the effects fall into three categories. One is cancer. So you mentioned leukemia, also brain tumors for people who hold a cell phone next to their head, salivary gland tumors, acoustic neuroma, which is a tumor of the auditory gland in the ear, uveal melanoma, which is a tumor of the eye, thyroid gland cancer. So, you know, everything associated with proximity and exposure. And leukemia for people who live near cell towers and other forms of electrosmog. So that's one category. Another category is reproductive problems. So there's been about 24 studies now showing that sperm is affected. So men who carry their cell phone in their pocket, who use it regularly, who are exposed to other forms of electrosmog, have damaged sperm. The sperm don't move as quickly. They die much more quickly. Some of them are deformed. So it really interferes with reproduction, the reproductive capacity. And it also causes problems with women who are pregnant. So their children are more likely to have behavioral problems starting about year 5 or 6, who have been exposed to microwave radiation in utero. So that's another important issue. The third category is really neurological and hormonal problems that we classify collectively as electrohypersensitivity, mentioning many of the symptoms that you commented on, but also things like Alzheimer's, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, multiple sclerosis, things like diabetes seem to be associated with this. So if you're a diabetic and you're electrically hypersensitive, your blood sugar will increase quite rapidly when you're exposed to this radiation. And then if you move away from that radiation, it will drop again. So this has nothing to do with eating or drugs. It's an environmentally induced response that your body has, which is a stress response. And if you look at the research on mechanisms, which is something scientists are very, very intrigued by, we know that it causes oxidative damage, and that alone can cause all of the symptoms that we've talked about, from the sperm, from the cancer, to the neurological problems.
Yeah, so if you have already diabetes, or you already have a child that actually has difficulty in class. Now, I do something called cell well-being hair scans, and it's actually, I take 46 root bulbs from the back of your hair, and it's the signature, the energy signature of your cell that actually picks up if things are an issue. And I like to share this one because it has direct to EMFs. Now, this young boy, the mother came and wanted her 11-year-old to get the hair scan done. He was acting up in school, wasn't paying attention. They wanted him to get on Ritalin. He was disrupting the class, blah, blah, blah. So, yes, let's get a hair scan. His report comes back. One of the things with the system shows EMF issues. I asked her, where does he live at home and what does he have in his room? He lived right above the garage. So the power coming into the house is in that garage. PlayStation, iPads, he had his own cell phone, all these things. So we have devices that can actually harmonize it, and we told her, obviously, turn things off, get that stuff out of his room, everything else. And they came back for a 90-day follow-up hair scan. And when I looked at the part of the EMF signatures, they were all back to normal instead of a priority. The cool thing about it was, and this is what's really neat, is the mother was talking to the teacher at a student-teacher talk, and the teacher said, I don't know what you're doing with your son, but he's not acting up in class anymore.
Yeah.
So that is a direct correlation of, yes, it does have a lot of issues with brain, ADD, ADHD, all those type of things. So again, if you already have an issue and you add this to it, it's just, that's why I think a lot of people don't think it's a thing, because, the doctor said you've got ADD or you've got fibromyalgia, you've got all these things. Well, if you're at a 5 and then you put EMFs into it, now you're at a 9. So if you can eliminate that EMF, well, you're probably back down to a 5. You might still have a little bit of an issue, but it won't be a huge issue. And that's, I think, a good segue get into this 5G, because I'm telling you that I learned from the CBS, I think it was 2020 or 60 Minutes, and ADS, the active denial system, and they called it the ray gun.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that to be quite crazy. And now it's becoming a reality. So if we could talk a little bit about that.
Well, scientists are very concerned with the 5G rollout, and many of them have signed appeals and petitions to slow it down, to stop it temporarily. 5G is obviously, many of your listeners and viewers will know that it's the fifth generation telecom technology. And we're being sold that concept to say that, oh, we're going to get faster internet access. They're not spending billions of dollars for us to get faster internet access. I mean, who's kidding who, right? So we know that there are other issues associated with it, and it's a real money grabber. So, a lot of people are going to end up making a lot of money. Unfortunately, I think even more people are going to become quite ill. 5G consists of 3 different bands on the electromagnetic spectrum. 2 of the bands are less than 6 gigahertz, and 1 band is within the millimeter band of the microwave radiation spectrum. That millimeter band has not been tested for any long-term exposure. It's used, as you say, with the active denial system. They're using it for crowd control. If they ramp up the intensity, it causes excruciating pain to anyone in the beam. And it doesn't matter how much clothing you're wearing and how thick, the outer wear is. It penetrates right into your skin and causes excruciating pain. Most people can't tolerate it for more than 3 seconds. So it's very effective. It's non-lethal in that regard. It's good, but it's going to affect your eyes. It's caused second-degree burns in some individuals who have been exposed. So it's not totally with no biological consequences, even for a very short exposure. When it comes to the millimeter waves that they're going to be using from satellites and from small cell antennas, that's not going to be nearly as intense, obviously, because we wouldn't have a population left after that. The problem with it is it can be ramped up, so you can increase the intensity, which means that to a certain degree it can be weaponized. And I think a lot of people are concerned about that. So it's a perfect weapon in the sense that it doesn't destroy buildings. It's not like a bomb. It just kills living organisms. So, if you want to get rid of anything living, it's a good way of doing it. The fact that they're rolling it out, putting up small cell antennas, every 3 to 4, 300 meters, it means that you might have one right outside your home, right outside your bedroom, and you won't be able to avoid exposure as soon as you leave your house. The good thing about millimeter waves is they don't penetrate readily. So chances are inside the home you'll probably be relatively safe from that frequency, but not from the sub 5 gigahertz frequency. So the sub 5 gigahertz frequencies you'll still be exposed to those. What I'm hearing from people, my colleagues around the world, is that they've started measuring the levels of radiation in communities that have 5G. And the levels were here before, and now they're up here. People are complaining of skin problems, almost like there's electricity flowing along your skin, which actually makes a lot of sense. And inability to sleep. They're having tinnitus, which is another common response to this radiation. So a lot of people are already anecdotally saying, I don't feel good, and I think it started shortly after the 5G antennas were rolled out. In some of these countries, they don't have the millimeter waves yet. In Canada, we haven't licensed them yet. In the United States, they're already there. And we did a little report to look at the COVID-19 and 5G to see if there was a connection. And we looked at states in the United States, and the states that had millimeter frequencies from 5G active versus states that only had 5G without the millimeter waves yet, there was a doubling of COVID-19 cases per population, and the levels of deaths was even higher as a rate. So it's going to impair your immune system, and that's going to lead you to being much less resistant to bacteria, viruses, and other pathogens.
Well, so it's a cumulative thing, and I think it's not damage. It's not going to kill you right from there unless it's weaponized. I guess we all don't know what that's going to do, but I think in one of your videos you were talking about there's 3 ways that they're bringing it out in towers and in fiber optics, and I think you said that the fiber optics was the safest. You could talk a little bit about that.
Well, there's four ways that they're bringing it out. So one is fiber optics, one is a satellite, one is a macro tower, so a large number of antennas in one location, and then small cells, which is just a little, little box on a lamppost. You could hardly notice it when you walk by. So they don't even have to tell you they're installing this on, in your neighborhood and exposing you. So those are the four different infrastructures that relate to 5G. The fiber optics is the safest. Anything that you put on fiber or a wire is not radiating. So you can put it through air, or you can put it onto a wire, just like electricity. We put electricity on a wire rather than trying to send it through air. It doesn't send through air very easily, but if it did, it would cause much more damage to us because we'd be exposed to it. Now we have to be close to the wire to be exposed to the electricity. The satellites, I was told, are going to be fairly benign if the levels of radiation are kept really low. However, if they're increased, then, all bets are off. And, that's one of the things a lot of us are concerned about. With the macro towers, you certainly wouldn't want to live next to a macro tower because those are going to be radiating all the time. And I don't know what the safe distance is going to be because this is totally brand new technology. When it comes to cell towers, ideally you should be more than 500 meters away. So this is going to be much greater than that, and they're putting them in cities, so you're not going to be able to be 500 meters away. And then the small cells are the ones that I think most people are concerned about because that's right in their neighborhood, that's right in front of their home. And they won't be able to avoid it. As soon as they go outside, they're going to be exposed. So those four infrastructures, the more they can put on fiber, the better. The less that we're exposed, the better. But with more people using the technology, if anything, our exposure is just going to go skyrocketing up.
Yeah, and I think people are concerned, not just humans, but we're talking bees and we're talking all these pollinators, and it's happening. I truly believe with geopathic stress, I think we learned that geopathic stress can cause some issues, but really we're okay with that. But we've got so many EMFs in the world and EMRs in the world that, it's chaos. And I think that it's just, we're like little kids in a candy shop as humans, and we really don't know what the effects are, but we're not just hurting us, we're hurting animals and insects and everything else. So what can we do? What can we do to actually help stop these, if there is anything, but what can we do to actually help ourselves for protection?
Yeah, there's a number of things you can do, and I call it RIDE. I use an acronym for it, RIDE, R-I-D-E. The R stands for reducing your exposure. So anything you can do to minimize your exposure will allow you to survive this exposure when you're not in control of it, so when you go out. So really important to keep your home as a sanctuary and keep it as low as possible with electrosmog. And there's a number of things you can do. There's paint, there's wallpaper that will shield the radiation, there's film you can put on your window, there's material that has silver fiber in it, surrounded by cotton. You can use it as curtains, you can use it as a canopy over your bed. So there's a lot of things that you can do. Unfortunately, a lot of these are quite costly. And if you have wireless technology inside your home, then you can't use the paint, you can't use the window film because it will simply reflect it back to you. So you can only use that if your home is absolutely pristine. And very few people have pristine homes. So that's one of the things you can do, is simply reduce your exposure. Replace your Wi-Fi with something, with an Ethernet cable that's wired, or anything on a wire would be a benefit. Get rid of your cordless phone. Go back to a regular, lined phone.
If you could talk a little bit about the cordless phone, which we've talked to people, customers before. I think people don't realize it's like having your own cell tower in your house. That's what I've told them.
Exactly. It's exactly that. And, these people don't want to live near a cell tower, but they have one in their home and they don't realize it. So I'm not blaming them. Unless you have a meter, you don't know what you're exposed to inside your home. So one thing I highly recommend is that people purchase an inexpensive meter. That's a good one for magnetic fields primarily. I don't use that for microwave radiation. It's just bounces all over the place. It doesn't give you a good value. There's one called Acousticom 2. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
I heard of it. Okay, Acousticom. Okay.
Acousticom 2. It's just a little portable one. It costs about $200 American, and it gives you a sound so you can begin to pick up the frequency signature of Wi-Fi versus a cell phone. I actually have a little I have a little PDF that tells you what the sound's like. I can actually play it for you if you like, and people can hear the difference. So maybe before the program's over, I can put that on. And it gives you a light that tells you green, amber, red with numbers. So
Okay.
you want to be in the green phase, and that's one of the best meters I found that's inexpensive that you can put in your pocket. So you have to measure exposure. With cordless phones, they radiate all the time. Like they don't go off, whether you're using the phone or not. And many people have that base station, the key one, in their bedroom right next to them. So no wonder these people can't sleep. It's just stimulating their brainwave activity so they can't actually physically fall asleep. And as you said earlier, it's cumulative. So the more you're exposed to it, the more likely you are going to develop this electrical sensitivity. And unfortunately, once you become hypersensitive, you can't be exposed to it because you will become really ill. And, you know, people are totally debilitated by this radiation once they reach that level. So you don't want to ever get to that level if you can avoid it. And that's by reducing your exposure. The I in RIDE stands for your immune system. So basically what this radiation does is it impairs your immune system, but your immune system might already be impaired from chronic illness or your age. You know, very young kids and the elderly already have an immune system that isn't fully functional. So anything you can do to boost your immune system will help. And what doctors are telling me is that vitamin D is absolutely critical, vitamin C is absolutely critical, zinc is critical to boost your immune system, and there's quite a few other things. So ingesting antioxidants will help, because one of the things this causes is oxidative damage. So, you know, you're countering it by taking some of these supplements and building up your immune system at the same time. The D stands for detoxification. A lot of people have toxins in them already. We live in a polluted environment almost anywhere in the world. We've got chemical toxins, mercury fillings for people who have that in their mouth. Mercury is a neurotoxin, and so if you have mercury amalgam in your mouth, or if you eat a lot of fish, or if you're occupationally exposed, then that in combination with the electrosmog seems to be synergistic. So the more mercury you have, the more metals you have in your body, the more chlorinated hydrocarbons you have in your body, the more likely you're going to develop the sensitivity. So detoxing in a gentle way is really, really critical to, you know, then lower your toxin level and build up your immune system, and then you'll be able to tolerate a lot of things. The E in RIDE stands for emotions. And one of the things that we've noticed is that some people are so emotionally engaged in what's going on that even if they're in an electromagnetically clean environment, their stress level is high, not because of the environment, but because of their thinking. It seems to affect the limbic system, and if you can't turn off your limbic system producing the stress hormones in your body, you're not going to recover, even if you reduce exposure, even if you detoxify, and even if you build up your immune system. So our brains are amazingly powerful. They determine how we react to the environment. And so if we're going to be delusional at all, and I call myself delusional, I'm totally delusional, but my delusions are very positive. So I believe that if you're going to be delusional in a way that benefits your body rather than harms your body. And fear is something that is going to harm your body. You cannot live in constant fear. And what they're doing now with COVID-19 and a lot of other things is they're just raising the fear level in the population, and that's making a lot of people sick. Just that fear concept from an emotional perspective.
I concur. Yeah, if you could share that device, if you have that, and
Sure. Let me just get it up. I'll get it in one
that'd be
second.
great.
Okay. So, what I have is a PDF. I can actually show my screen if you wanted.
Sure.
Would, would you like that?
Great.
Okay, share screen. Host disabled attendee square sharing, so screen sharing. So, could you just enable me to share my screen?
Thought I did, but we can look here.
Okay, let me try now. No, it's still disabled. You go to your host and screen. Well, let me just play it if we can't hear it. That's see the screen. That's okay. So this is what a Bluetooth device sounds like. Oh, hold on. So that's Bluetooth. This is what a cordless phone sounds like. This is what a cell phone sounds like. This is what Wi-Fi sounds like. Kind of got a neat beat.
Yeah.
This is a baby monitor. And this is the mother.
Yeah, I'm glad that you said baby monitor. That's another one that people have to realize that, wow, I mean, yes, you want to listen to make sure the baby's okay, but what happened to the old sneak into the room and see if they're sleeping? I think that's way better than having a monitor because those are just like having a mini tower in your house. Again,
I agree. I agree. And this is the mother's monitor. You know how there's two to the monitor, there's the baby, and then there's the
right.
mother.
Okay.
Now I'm going to turn them all on for just a split second. And basically, this is what's happening in your home if you have these devices. And if you could hear them, you get rid of them really, really quickly. Let me turn them on all at once. Right?
And it doesn't sound like a fun song to listen to.
No, it doesn't. And, you know, I have this on my website. You can download it, share it with people. We're really trying to educate the public about this so that they can make smart decisions rather than, you know, decisions that are ill-informed. And, you know, I don't ever, you know, one of my greatest values is personal freedom. And that's being taken away from us. And that's what I object to more than anything, because if you don't have freedom, you can't control your own health, you can't control your own environment. You've lost virtually everything. And I think the more people know about this, the more choices they can make that are you know, useful to them and protect them. I don't insist that people, you know, stop using cell phones. I think that's your own personal choice. You know, whether you smoke, that's fine. It's your choice. Just don't smoke in my presence because I don't want to breathe in that secondhand pollution. And the same thing happens when you use a cell phone. You've got secondhand pollution that everyone's being exposed to.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate your time, Magna. I'd love to do another one with you at some point, and hopefully this is enough information that people have some educated choices to make here, and they can start doing their own research and talking to their, you know, governments and everything else, saying, look, I mean, let's find what we can do to help ourselves and yes, keep our freedoms. And I mean, that's a big thing for me is we should be free. This whole Corona thing, EMFs, all those things. Let's stick it down our throat.
I agree with you entirely.
You have a great day. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Greg. Real pleasure talking with you.
You as well.